The floors of Meridian Tower gleamed like mirrors beneath Priscilla Carter's sensible black heels. She moved through the executive suite level with practiced invisibility, the kind perfected over years of being professionally overlooked. Her arms balanced a stack of confidential merger documents, her posture perfect, her expression pleasantly neutral. To the executives streaming past her, she was furniture. Useful, unremarkable, instantly forgettable. Welcome to my channel. If you're wondering how a woman becomes invisible in plain sight, stay with me. Because what you're about to hear is a story about the most dangerous kind of warrior. The kind nobody sees coming. But before we dive in, if you appreciate stories about underestimated heroes and unexpected justice, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss what happens next. Priscilla had been an executive assistant at Meridian Tower for exactly 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Not that anyone asked. Not that anyone cared. But she knew. She knew everything. The affairs conducted in corner offices after hours. The embezzlement hidden in quarterly reports. The cocaine habits masked by excessive energy and frequent bathroom breaks. Her photographic memory cataloged it all. She reached the executive elevator, pressed the button for the 51st floor, and allowed herself a moment to check her reflection in the polished steel doors. Professional. Composed. American. Neutral makeup that made her features pleasant but unmemorable. Hair pulled back in a sleek bun that suggested efficiency without personality. Clothing that was expensive enough to blend in, but not so expensive as to draw questions about how an assistant could afford designer labels. What no one in this building knew, what no one in Los Angeles knew, was that Priscilla Dawn Carter had another name. Choi Seo-yeon. And 13 years ago, in a parking lot in Gwangju, South Korea, she'd watched her entire family die in an explosion of fire and twisted metal that still haunted her dreams. And began her descent into a day that would unravel 13 years of careful planning in the span of 15 minutes. 2 hours earlier, at LAC's private terminal, Baek Hye-jin stepped onto American soil for the first time in 5 years. She wore white. She always wore white. A flowing hanbok-inspired designer suit that made her look like a ghost from a more elegant era, something ethereal and untouchable. At 62, the matriarch of the Baek crime family moved with the deliberate grace of someone who'd never needed to hurry. People waited for her. People feared her. In the Korean underworld, from Seoul to Los Angeles, they called her the White Orchid. Beautiful, rare, and absolutely poisonous if you touched her the wrong way. Her son, Baek Kyung-rak, walked 2 steps behind, as protocol demanded. 35 years old, Stanford MBA, fluent in English, Korean, and Mandarin, and perpetually trying to prove himself worthy of his mother's empire. He'd built legitimate businesses over the past decade. Tech venture capital investments that had paid off spectacularly. Real estate developments that transformed neighborhoods. Import-export operations that actually imported and exported legal goods. He'd Americanized the family operations, made them respectable, cleaned the money until it sparkled. But standing next to his mother, dressed in her white suit with her iron composure, he always felt like a child playing dress-up in his father's clothes. "Mother," Kyung-rak said in Korean as they climbed into the waiting black SUV, "the Meridian penthouse is ready. Security has swept it twice." The team checked every room, every ventilation shaft, every possible entry point. "It's completely secure." Hye-jin gazed out the tinted window at the Los Angeles sprawl, the endless city spreading in every direction like a concrete ocean. So different from Seoul. So chaotic and spread out, lacking the density and vertical ambition of Korean cities. "I want to see everything," she said softly, her voice carrying the quiet authority that made grown men tremble. "Every operation, every business, every person you trust." Her eyes, dark and infinitely calculating, shifted to her son. "And I want to understand why your CFO has been transferring money to accounts in the Cayman Islands." Kyung-rak's blood went cold. The temperature in the SUV seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What?" His voice came out strangled, barely controlled. "That's impossible." Nam Hyun-woo has been with us for 8 years. He's family. His aunt practically raised me when I first came to America. "We will discuss it tonight," Hye-jin said with finality that ended all conversation. "For now, take me to this tower of yours. Let me see what my son has built in America. Let me see if you've become so Americanized that you've forgotten how to see betrayal when it's sitting in your own office." The previous night, in a modest one-bedroom apartment above a Korean grocery store in San Pedro, Priscilla sat in front of 3 computer monitors arranged on a desk she'd assembled from IKEA parts. The blue light painted her face in shifting patterns as she scrolled through encrypted files she'd spent 13 years compiling. Bank transfers tracked through 17 shell companies. Shipping manifests with subtle discrepancies in cargo weights. Immigration documents with forged signatures she'd learned to recognize. Audio recordings extracted from hidden devices planted in karaoke rooms and private dining areas. Victim testimonies recorded anonymously, their voices digitally altered to protect identities while preserving their stories. Every piece of evidence had been meticulously gathered, cross-referenced, verified through multiple independent sources. She'd learned early that a single piece of evidence could be dismissed. A pattern was harder to ignore, and what she'd built over 13 years wasn't just evidence. It was an irrefutable narrative, a story told through financial transactions and shipping records and the broken voices of women who'd been promised dreams and given nightmares. On her wall, in a simple black frame, hung a single photograph, the only physical reminder she allowed herself of the life before, a family. Korean man in his 40s, kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled, strong hands that had never raised themselves in anger. Beside him, a Korean woman with a gentle smile and hair going gray at the temples, laugh lines around her mouth from a lifetime of finding joy in small things. And between them, sitting on the man's shoulders, a young black girl with cornrows and beads, maybe 9 years old, grinning at the camera with gap-toothed delight. Behind them, the bustling chaos of Yongdong Market in Gwangju, South Korea, with its endless stalls of fish and vegetables and the organized chaos of merchants calling out their prices. Priscilla touched the photo gently, her fingertips tracing the outline of the man's face. "Tomorrow, Abioji," she whispered in perfect Gwangju dialect, the melodic intonation as natural as breathing. "Tomorrow it begins. 13 years I've waited. 13 years I've prepared. Tomorrow, the woman who killed you finally faces what she's done." She'd learned that morning through her carefully cultivated network of informants that Baek Hai-jin was coming to Lowe's Angels. The White Orchid herself. The woman whose best friend had been Choi D-young, the man in the photograph. The intelligence operative who'd found a starving 7-year-old black child trying to steal from a shipping container at Gwangju Port, and instead of calling the police, had taken her home. The man who'd raised her as his daughter, taught her Korean and strategy, and how to be invisible when necessary. The man who'd been murdered by his own organization 13 years ago because he discovered something that threatened the wrong people. Priscilla had been positioning herself at Meridian Tower for 3 years, working her way up from temp to permanent assistant to executive assistant, waiting for this exact moment. She knew the Baek family eventually used the building for their American operations. She'd studied their patterns, their preferences, their security protocols. She knew patience was the sharpest weapon in her arsenal. And tomorrow, everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed, would either succeed spectacularly or destroy her completely. She opened a small wooden box on her desk, worn smooth by decades of use. Inside lay a jade recipe book, its pages yellowed with age, filled with her foster mother's beautiful handwriting. Korean recipes written in careful Hangul. Kimchi jjigae with the exact proportions of gochugaru and fermented shrimp. Japchae with instructions for getting the glass noodles exactly the right texture. Bulgogi marinated with her foster mother's secret ingredient, a touch of Asian pear juice for sweetness and tenderness. Cooking notes, household tips, the accumulated wisdom of a woman who'd made a home and a life. But in the margins, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look and what you were looking for, were Priscilla's real notes. Evidence locations, witness statement summaries, financial transaction patterns. The truth about who really killed Choi D-young and why, hidden in the spaces between recipes for comfort food. Sleep was impossible. Priscilla spent the night reviewing her plan one final time, checking and rechecking every variable, every contingency, every possible point of failure. By dawn, her eyes burned and her coffee had gone cold, but she was ready. As ready as anyone could be to confront the ghosts of their past while wearing a professional smile and carrying someone else's paperwork. The elevator doors opened on the 51st floor at 11:47 a.m. Priscilla stepped inside, arms full of documents for a meeting she was supposed to attend as note-taker and silent observer, her mind focused on the afternoon's tasks. The doors began to close with their soft hydraulic hiss. "Hold it," a sharp voice commanded in Korean. A hand shot between the closing doors, triggering the safety sensor. They reopened with a gentle ding. Priscilla pressed herself against the back corner, making herself small, making herself invisible, as security personnel entered first. Two men, professional builds hidden under expensive suits, scanning the small space with the kind of paranoia that came from years of keeping dangerous people alive. Their eyes passed over Priscilla without pause. Just another office worker. Just another face that didn't matter. Then came Baek Kyung-rock, impossibly tall at 6'2", towering over most Koreans, his tailored Armani suit fitting perfectly across shoulders built in Stanford's gym. Phone pressed to his ear, voice low and intense, speaking rapid Korean that Priscilla's trained ear caught and cataloged automatically. Something about shipping delays and customs inspections. Legitimate business or cover for something else, she couldn't tell from context alone. And finally, moving like a white flame given human form, Baek Hye-jin entered the elevator. Up close, she was smaller than Priscilla expected. Barely 5 feet tall, delicate-boned, looking like a strong wind might blow her away. But the presence she carried made her seem massive. The air pressure in the elevator changed when she entered. Everyone stood straighter, breathed more carefully. Priscilla kept her eyes down, her breathing steady, her posture submissive and unthreatening. Just another invisible service worker sharing an elevator with people who never looked at faces like hers. People who moved through the world surrounded by staff who anticipated their needs and remained carefully unseen. The doors closed. The elevator began its descent. Then it jolted violently, metal grinding against metal, a sound like mechanical bones breaking. The lights flickered once, twice, 3 times. The elevator stopped with a groaning shudder that echoed in the confined space, the kind of sound that promised expensive repairs and engineering investigations. Emergency lighting clicked on, bathing everything in dim amber that made everyone look slightly unwell. Hye-jin's bodyguards immediately moved to protective positions, creating a physical barrier between her and any potential threat. Kyung-rock steadied his mother with one hand on her elbow, his phone forgotten, attention laser-focused on ensuring her safety. "Equipment malfunction," one bodyguard said in Korean, his voice professionally calm despite the slight tension in his jaw. He reached for the emergency phone mounted in the panel, lifted the receiver. No response. Not even a dial tone. He tried again, pressing buttons, checking connections. Nothing. The intercom crackled with heavy static, the sound of interference rather than simple technical failure. Building security tried to come through, but the signal was breaking up badly, words fragmenting into incomprehensible syllables. The bodyguards exchanged concerned looks, entire conversations happening in brief eye contact. In their world, coincidences didn't exist. Random malfunctions were cover stories. This kind of failure, total communications blackout while trapping high-value targets in a confined space, meant sabotage, meant someone knew they were here, meant danger. Priscilla assessed the situation in seconds, her mind cataloging details with the automatic efficiency of years of training. The elevator's emergency panel was accessible, mounted low on the wall to her right. She could see the override mechanism through the small gap where the cover plate didn't quite fit flush. The static pattern on the intercom wasn't random. It was rhythmic, suggesting a specific type of jamming device operating on a narrow frequency band. And the way the elevator had stopped, perfectly between floors rather than settling to the nearest landing point, spoke to someone with technical knowledge deliberately trapping them here. She made a decision that would change everything, that would unravel 13 years of careful planning and force her to face the confrontation years earlier than she'd intended. Setting down her documents carefully, Priscilla moved forward with calm authority, the mask of submissive service worker dropping away. The bodyguards tensed immediately, hands moving toward the concealed weapons they definitely weren't supposed to have in an American office building. But she ignored them completely, her focus on the emergency panel. She opened it with practiced ease, her fingers finding the catches without fumbling, and examined the wiring inside. The interference pattern was exactly what she'd expected. External jamming device, probably placed on floor 49, directly below them. Crude but effective. She traced the override switch, mentally calculating the risk of what she was about to do. Then she pressed the emergency call button and spoke, her voice clear and confident and utterly, devastatingly fluent. In perfect, flawless Gwangju dialect, the melodic intonation that marked someone as native to that specific region of South Korea, she said, "Building engineering, this is the executive elevator. We have a total system failure. It's very dangerous. Please come quickly. The interference is coming from an external source. You need to check the relay on floor 49, Eastern Service Corridor, probably mounted in the ceiling access panel near the ventilation return. It will have a lithium battery pack and a small antenna." The silence in the elevator was so complete that Priscilla could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the breathing of everyone around her, could hear the soft hum of the emergency lighting system. Hai-jin's head snapped toward Priscilla so fast it was almost violent, vertebrae popping with the speed of movement. Her eyes, which had barely registered the black woman's presence when they'd entered, now locked onto her with laser intensity, examining every detail of her face as if trying to solve an impossible puzzle. Kyung-rak's phone slipped slightly in his grip, nearly falling, saved only by a reflexive grab. The bodyguards stared openly, their professional composure cracking, trying to process what they'd just heard. A black woman, speaking Gwangju dialect, not textbook Korean, not Seoul standard. But the specific regional variation that even most Koreans couldn't perfectly replicate unless they'd been raised there. The building engineer's voice came back through the static, startled and confused. Yes, we're checking now. Who is this? How did you know the exact location of the jamming device? We've been trying to track the source for 3 minutes. Priscilla switched back to English. I used to work in building maintenance, sir. I recognize the pattern. I've seen this kind of setup before. You should also check the backup power systems because this feels like a coordinated test of your security protocols. But the damage was done. Or rather, the reveal had begun. The mask had cracked and there was no putting it back together. Hai-jin took one step closer to Priscilla, then another. She was small, barely reaching Priscilla's shoulder, but she seemed to fill the entire elevator, her presence expanding to occupy all available space. The temperature seemed to drop with each step. When she spoke, it was in the melodic, distinctive Gwangju dialect that most Koreans could recognize instantly, but few could authentically replicate without years of immersion. Where did you learn to speak like that? This was a woman who'd built an empire on knowing things, on extracting information, on understanding what people hid. Priscilla kept her eyes down, her heart hammering so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. The plan had been to remain invisible for weeks longer, to position herself carefully, to choose the moment of revelation. But fate and a jammed elevator had forced her hand. I lived in Gwangju, ma'am, as a child, a black child. In Gwangju. When? What years? With what family? Doing what? String of questions, each one precise, each one designed to extract maximum information with minimum words. From age 7 to 16, ma'am. 9 years. I lived near Yongdong Market, in the neighborhood where the streets smell like grilled mackerel in the mornings and old women sell vegetables from carts in the afternoons. I learned Korean from the market aunties who gave me food when I was hungry. I learned Gwangju dialect because it was the only language anyone around me spoke. With whom? Hai-jin repeated the question sharp now, cutting through Priscilla's deflection. What family took in a black child in Gwangju? What family kept you for 9 years? Give me a name. Priscilla hesitated. This was the moment. The precipice. 13 years of planning, of hiding, of waiting, balanced on what she said next. She could lie. She could deflect. She could maintain some semblance of cover, or she could face the ghost she'd been chasing and hope she survived the encounter. With Choi Di-young, she said quietly, the name emerging like a prayer and a curse combined. And his wife, Jin-hee. And his mother, who everyone called Halmoni even though she insisted we use her name, Sumi. And their entire household. Until the day they all died. Hai-jin's face transformed, color draining from her cheeks like someone had opened a valve and let all the blood flow out. Kyung-rak moved toward his mother instinctively, concern overriding his confusion, his hand on her arm supporting her weight as her knees seemed to weaken. Di-young had no children, Hai-jin whispered, her voice cracking on the name, emotion bleeding through for the first time. He and Jin-hee tried for years. Medical procedures. traditional medicine. Prayers at every temple and church, but no children, no daughter. Priscilla finally raised her eyes, meeting the matriarch's gaze directly for the first time, letting her see the truth written in every line of her face. "He had a daughter," she said clearly. "Me. He found me stealing from a shipping container at Gwangju port when I was 7 years old. An American missionary couple had brought me to Korea when I was 4, then abandoned me 3 years later when a black child became too inconvenient to their image, too hard to explain to their congregation back home. I lived on the streets for 3 months. Di-young found me. Instead of calling the police, he took me home, fed me, taught me Korean, gave me a name. My name is Choi Seo-yeon." The elevator shuddered back to life, the jamming device apparently located and disabled. The lights brightened to normal levels. The intercom crackled with the building engineer's voice apologizing profusely, explaining about the malfunction, promising immediate investigation. The doors prepared to open onto the lobby where security would be waiting with questions and concerns. But none of them moved. They stood frozen in this small metal box, the past colliding with the present in the space between floors. "You died," Hae-jin said, her voice barely audible, each word forced out against obvious pain. "In the bombing, 13 years ago, May 18th, Democracy Movement Memorial Ceremony. The car bomb in the parking lot, you died with them, with Di-young and Jin-hee and Halmoni Sumi, everyone in that car. The report said everyone died. I buried everyone. I said goodbye to everyone. You died." "No, ma'am," Priscilla said, her voice steady now, strengthened by truth after years of hiding. "I survived. I was buying flowers for the memorial, white chrysanthemums from the vendor Halmoni Sumi always used. I was walking back to the parking lot when the bomb detonated. I was thrown backward by the blast. I got burned. I got cut by flying glass, but I survived. And I've been waiting ever since to finish what my father started, to find the person who ordered his death, to bring them to justice. 13 years of waiting, 13 years of preparing, and now you're here, and now it's time." The doors opened onto the lobby, bright and normal and utterly mundane. Building security rushed forward with apologies and explanations and assurances that this had never happened before and would never happen again. But Baek Hae-jin stood frozen, staring at the ghost of a child she'd thought long dead. A child who spoke with the voice of her murdered best friend's daughter. A child who had somehow become this composed, dangerous woman standing before her in a business suit and sensible heels. "You will attend us tonight," Hae-jin commanded in Korean, her voice regaining its steel even as her eyes remained wounded. "Only you. We have much to discuss, Choi Seo-yeon. We have 13 years to account for, and you will tell me everything. Every day, every moment, every step that brought you back to me." "Yes, Iamione," Priscilla replied, using the respectful term for mother, the word emerging instinctively from years of calling Hae-jin that in her mind, thinking of her as the woman her father had loved like a sister. The word hung in the air like a detonation of its own kind. As Priscilla gathered her scattered documents from the elevator floor, her hands finally shook, adrenaline and fear and relief flooding through her system now that the immediate moment had passed. 13 years of invisible warfare, of patient hunting, of careful planning. And in one elevator malfunction, everything had accelerated. The timeline had collapsed. The careful approach had been abandoned. Now she was committed to a path with no retreat, no second chances, no room for error. From a penthouse office 3 blocks away, in a gleaming tower that housed Sunrise Entertainment on its top floors, Song-mi Ran watched the scene unfold on a hacked security feed. She was 58, elegant in the way that expensive clothing and regular salon appointments could make anyone elegant, with silver hair styled in a sophisticated bob, and the kind of face that reminded people of their favorite grandmother. Soft features, kind eyes, a gentle smile. Nobody looking at her would see the woman who'd ordered the execution of an entire family, who ran a human trafficking network that had destroyed hundreds of lives across 2 continents, who betrayed her best friend to protect her own growing empire. So, she murmured, watching the black woman exit the elevator, watching Hae-jin's face transform from shock to something dangerously close to hope. Di-young's little pet survived. The stray he picked up from the docks. How inconvenient. How very inconvenient indeed. She picked up her phone, a secure line that couldn't be traced or tapped, and dialed a number she'd hoped never to use. The voice that answered was professional, emotionless, exactly what she paid for. "The assassination is moved up," she said calmly, Tonight. The target is Beek Hai Jin. The location is likely Mugunghwa restaurant in Beverly Hills. They always use it for private meetings. Poison in the tea service, traditional approach. And find out everything about the woman calling herself Priscilla Carter. Everything. Her jobs, her residences, her contacts, her bank accounts. I want to know who she really is and what she's been doing for 13 years. And I want to know it by sunset. She ended the call and turned back to the security feed, watching as Hai Jin and Kyung Rock left the building. The black woman, Seo Yeon, Priscilla, whoever she really was, staring after them with an expression that was complex and unreadable. This, Songmi Ran thought, was what happened when you left loose ends. When you assumed everyone in a car died in an explosion. When you relied on reports instead of confirming bodies personally. Di-young had taught his daughter well, it seemed. Taught her to be invisible. To wait, to plan. But Mi-ran had been playing this game longer, and she had no intention of losing to a ghost. That evening, as sunset painted Lowe's angels in shades of orange and purple, Priscilla stood in her apartment staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She changed into appropriate attire for serving at an exclusive restaurant. Black slacks, crisp white shirt, low heels that allowed quick movement if necessary. Elegant but clearly service industry. The uniform of invisible people everywhere. But beneath her blouse, hidden against her skin, she wore the jade ring Choi Di-young had given her on her 12th birthday. Carved with tiny orchids, ancient and precious, a family heirloom passed down through generations. He'd placed it on her finger and said in Gwangju, "Dialect, you are my daughter now in every way that matters, and this proves it." She'd worn it every day until the bombing, lost it in the chaos and flames and horror of that day, assumed it was gone forever. 3 years ago, a package had arrived at her apartment with no return address. Inside, wrapped in silk, the ring, and a note in Korean. He wanted you to have this. The handwriting was unfamiliar. The postmark was Seoul. She'd never discovered who sent it. But she wore it now, hidden, a reminder of why she'd spent 13 years building this moment. Her apartment looked modest to casual observers. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, lived in but not decorated with any personal touches that might reveal too much. But behind a sliding bookshelf, the kind you could buy from any furniture store, was her real workspace. Not walls of photographs like some television detective. That was too risky, too visible, too easy for someone to discover. Instead, encrypted hard drives stacked in fireproof safe. Blockchain-verified documents stored across multiple secure servers. Audio files backed up to 7 different locations, 3 in countries with strong privacy laws and no extradition treaties. Victim testimonies recorded anonymously and stored in fragments across the dark web, each piece meaningless alone, but devastating when assembled. Financial forensics that had taken her years to compile, tracking money through 17 layers of shell companies and offshore accounts, until the pattern emerged clear and irrefutable. Priscilla had spent years working invisible jobs, each one chosen specifically for what it could teach her, or what access it provided. Her phone buzzed. A text message, untraceable number. The restaurant is Mugunghwa. Private dining room, 2nd floor. 7 p.m. Come alone. Priscilla looked at her reflection one final time, took a deep breath. 13 years had led to this moment. 13 years of patience and planning and careful invisible warfare. Tonight, she would sit across from the woman her father had loved like a sister. Tonight, she would begin the endgame. Tonight, everything would change. She locked her apartment, set her security systems, left notes in 3 different secure locations detailing everything she knew, insurance in case she didn't survive the evening. Then she headed to Beverly Hills, to Mugunghwa restaurant, to face the family her father had died protecting. The private dining room at Mugunghwa was elegant minimalism executed perfectly. Low table of dark polished wood, traditional floor seating with cushions that cost more than most people's monthly rent, perfect lighting that made everyone look their best, art on the walls that whispered money and taste. When Priscilla entered, escorted by a server who'd been told only that she was expected, Beek Hai Jin and Beek Kyung Rock were already seated. The matriarch had changed into a simpler white hanbok traditional Korean dress adapted for modern wear, the fabric flowing like water. Kyung Rock wore an expression of barely contained curiosity mixed with suspicion, the look of a man trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. "Sit," Jin commanded in Korean, gesturing to the cushion across from her with a small, elegant motion. You will eat with us, not serve us. Tonight you are not a worker. Tonight you are family, or the ghost of family. We will see which. Priscilla sat, her posture perfect from years of Young's training, her mind racing through possibilities and dangers. A bodyguard stood outside the closed door. She'd seen him as she entered. They were alone here, vulnerable. Exactly what Song Mi Ran would want. Exactly the kind of opportunity that assassination teams dreamed of. Jin studied her in silence, her eyes moving over Priscilla's face like she was memorizing every detail, comparing what she saw to memories 13 years old. Then, softly, tell me everything. From the beginning, every word, every day. I want to know how Young's daughter survived, how you came to be here, what you've been doing, all of it. So Priscilla did. She told them about the American missionary couple, bright and energetic and full of good intentions, who'd brought her to Korea at age 4 as part of their mission work. How they'd paraded her in front of their congregation, the adorable black child they were saving, proof of their Christian charity. How the novelty had worn off after 3 years. How a black daughter had become inconvenient to their image when they wanted to return to the United States, too difficult to explain, too complicated to maintain. How they'd simply left her at a children's home in Gwangju and disappeared, abandoning her as easily as discarding an unwanted toy. She told them about living on Gwangju streets for 3 months, invisible among the urban poor, sleeping in cardboard boxes, stealing food from market stalls, learning to be a ghost. About Choi Young finding her trying to break into a shipping container at the port, looking for anything valuable to steal, desperate and starving and 7 years old. He could have called the police, Priscilla said softly, her voice catching on emotion she'd thought she'd buried. He could have turned me over to social services. Instead, he bought me food, sat with me while I ate, asked me questions in simple Korean that I barely understood. Then he took me home. To his wife Jin-hee, who fed me more food, drew me a bath, found me clothes. To his mother Soo-mi, who looked at this black child her son had brought home and simply said, well, I always wanted a granddaughter. Jin's eyes glistened with tears she refused to let fall. Young always collected strays, she said, her voice rough with suppressed emotion. Dogs, cats, people nobody else wanted. It drove me crazy. I told him he had too soft a heart for the work we did. But he said that's exactly why he did the work, to protect the strays, the lost ones, the people society threw away. He trained me, Priscilla continued, the memories flowing now unstoppable. Not just language and culture, though Jin-hee taught me to read and write Korean, taught me proper grammar and pronunciation. And Halmoni Soo-mi taught me to cook, to clean, to be a proper Korean daughter. But a Byoji Young, he taught me other things. Strategy, observation, how to read people, how to see what they were hiding. Intelligence gathering. How to become invisible when necessary, how to blend into any environment. He said a good operative makes themselves invaluable by being underestimated, by being overlooked. He trained me the same way he trained his agents. I didn't understand why then. I thought it was just games, exercises, but he was preparing me, teaching me to survive. He trained you, Kyung Rock interrupted, his voice sharp with disbelief. A child. He trained a child in intelligence operations. That's insane. That's dangerous. He trailed off, unable to articulate the wrongness of it. He trained everyone, Jin said quietly, her voice distant with memory. That's who he was. My intelligence chief. My best friend since we were children in Gwangju, running through those same streets where you slept. The one person in this world I trusted completely with everything. The person who knew all my secrets and never betrayed a single one. And she turned to Priscilla, her face crumpling slightly. Then why didn't I protect him? Why didn't I see the danger? Why didn't I save him? The question hung in the air, heavy with guilt and grief. Priscilla felt tears on her own cheeks now, hot and unstoppable. Because you didn't know, she said, her voice breaking. You couldn't have known. The person who betrayed him was someone you trusted, someone who'd been by your side for decades, someone who knew exactly how to hide what they were doing. You didn't fail him, Iamione. She failed you. She failed all of us. Then Priscilla reached into her pocket, pulled out a small recording device, the kind that looked like a simple USB drive. She placed it on the table between them. May I? At Jin's silent nod, Priscilla connected it to her phone, pulled up an audio file, pressed play. A woman's voice filled the room, 13 years younger but unmistakable to anyone who knew her. Song Mi Ran's voice, captured on a recording Di-young had made 3 days before his death. Insurance he'd hidden in multiple locations in case something happened to him. A recording that 17-year-old Seo-yeon had found in the wreckage of their home, clutched in her burned hand, the only thing she'd managed to save. Di-young knows too much, Mi-ran's voice said, discussing something with an unknown male voice. He's investigating the trafficking network. He's gathered evidence. He's planning to bring it to Hai-jin next week during the memorial ceremony. If he presents this to her, if she sees what we've built, everything collapses. She'll never approve. She's too sentimental about protecting innocence. This operation is worth millions annually. I've invested too much to let Di-young's conscience destroy it, so we end it. We end him. Kill everyone in. That house, make it look like political violence. Do it during the memorial ceremony, maximum confusion. Car bomb, they'll never suspect family, and make sure no one survives, no witnesses, no one to ask questions later. The recording clicked off. Silence filled the room like something physical, pressing down on all of them. Hai-jin's teacup, lifted halfway to her lips, shattered against the table, porcelain fragments scattering, tea pooling on the dark wood. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't control them. Her face had transformed into something terrible, grief and rage and betrayal fighting for dominance. Kyung-rak's hand moved instinctively toward where a weapon would be concealed under his jacket, his body responding to threat even though the threat was 13 years past. I've been building a case for 13 years, Priscilla said quietly, each word precise and clear. Financial records showing millions embezzled from Beek family accounts and funneled into Mi-ran's separate operations. Victim testimonies from 47 women who were promised careers in K-pop and Korean entertainment, then trafficked when they arrived in Korea or America. Shipping manifests showing discrepancies in cargo, women being moved like merchandise. Audio recordings from inside her operations, conversations about pricing and delivery and disposal. Immigration documents with forged signatures. Bank transfers through shell companies. Everything documented, verified through multiple sources, backed up in locations she can never reach. Mi-ran's been using your infrastructure to traffic women for 15 years, promising them dreams through her entertainment company, then selling them into nightmare. And she's been embezzling millions to fund her own competing organization. She's building an empire on the suffering of innocence, using the Beek family name as cover. She gestured to Kyung-rak, her expression apologetic. Your CFO, Nam Hyun-woo, he's her nephew. His mother, Mi-ran's younger sister, raised him after his parents died when he was 12. He's been feeding her information and funneling money for 8 years. Every security protocol, every financial transaction, every movement of Beek family assets. She knows everything about your operations because he tells her everything. That's impossible, Kyung-rak started, his voice strangled. Nam has been with us since I started the American operations. He helped me set up the legitimate businesses. He's family. His aunt, Mi-ran, she practically raised me when I first came to America for school. She helped me understand American culture. She introduced me to business contacts. She's mother's oldest friend. This is insane. You're asking us to believe that the woman who's been by our side for 40 years is a traitor and a monster. I'm not asking you to believe anything, Priscilla replied, her voice harder now, strengthened by 13 years of certainty. I'm presenting you with evidence. Facts, documents, recordings. The truth, whether you want to accept it or not. Your CFO is scheduled to transfer $2 million to a Cayman Islands account tonight at midnight. I can prove it. I've been inside your financial systems for 6 months. Not to steal, but to document. To prove what's being stolen from you. She pulled out her phone, brought up encrypted files, showed them transaction patterns going back 8 years. Money flowing out of Beek accounts in amounts small enough to avoid immediate attention, thousands here, tens of thousands there, accumulating into millions over time. Showed them the shell companies, the offshore accounts, the web of financial infrastructure that Mi-ran had built using their resources. Why? Hai-jin's voice was barely a whisper, broken and lost. Why tell us? Why not just destroy her yourself? You have all this evidence. You could have gone to the authorities. You could have exposed her. You could have ended this years ago. Why wait? Why come to me now? Because my father loved you, Priscilla said simply. Because he died protecting your honor, investigating crimes committed in your name without your knowledge. Because he believed in justice, not revenge. And because those 47 women, those girls, They deserve more than a quiet execution in an alley somewhere. They deserve the world to know what happened to them. They deserve Miran to face public trial, public shame, public punishment. They deserve their suffering to mean something. Hai-Jin reached across the table with both hands, took Priscilla's hands in hers. Her grip was surprisingly strong for such a small woman. You are Di-Young's daughter in every way that matters, in every way that counts. And that makes you mine. You are my daughter now. Do you understand? Family. Not because of blood, because of choice. Because of love, because of what he would have wanted. The moment should have been perfect, cathartic, healing. But Priscilla's instincts, honed by Di-Young's training and 13 years of survival, screamed warning. The timing was too convenient, the privacy too complete. Miran would know about this meeting, would anticipate this conversation, would act to protect herself. Priscilla started to speak, to warn them when the door opened, not the bodyguard checking in. A waiter, elegant and professional, carrying a wooden tray with traditional Korean tea service. Fine porcelain pot, matching cups, small sweets arranged artistically. He bowed respectfully, his Korean flawless and formal. Compliments of the house, he said smoothly. Special blend from Jeju Island, our finest tea, with the owner's respect for honored guests. He began to pour, the liquid streaming from pot to cup in a graceful arc. And Priscilla's photographic memory, her trained observation skills, caught 3 details in rapid succession. First, the packaging on the tea box was wrong, the label slightly off-center, printed on paper that was too glossy for a traditional Korean tea company. Second, the color of the liquid was too dark, too murky, lacking the clarity of properly brewed Korean green tea. Third, beneath the floral scent of the tea itself, something else. Bitter. Chemical. An almond undertone that she recognized from chemistry courses she'd taken, from research into poisons and their signatures. Cyanide derivative, fast-acting, untraceable if you didn't know to look for it. Don't drink that. Priscilla lunged across the table with explosive speed, her arms sweeping out, catching the tray and sending it flying. The teapot shattered against the wall. Cups exploded into fragments. Liquid splashed across the floor. The waiter's mask of professionalism slipped in an instant, replaced by cold calculation and killer's focus. He moved with trained efficiency, not like a server but like an operative, a professional. His hand went to his belt, came back with a blade. Not a kitchen knife. A weapon, purpose-built for killing quietly and efficiently. He slashed toward Hai-Jin, going for the target, the high-value kill that justified this entire operation. Priscilla intercepted, her body moving on pure instinct and training that Di-Young had drilled into her 10,000 times until it became reflex. She caught the man's wrist, her grip sure and strong, applied a Hapkido joint lock that hyperextended his elbow, forcing the blade from nerveless fingers. Knife clattered away across the polished floor. She swept his legs with a precise kick, drove him down hard. His head cracked against the table edge. He tried to rise. Priscilla's elbow to his temple rendered him unconscious, his body going limp, threat neutralized. The door burst open. The bodyguard rushed in, weapon drawn, professional instincts bringing him to Hai-Jin's side instantly. But a second assassin came through behind him, moving in the guard's blind spot, garrote looping up toward his neck. Kyung-Rok drew his own weapon, the smooth motion of someone who trained extensively, fired twice. Center mass, professional shooting. The second assassin dropped, his weapon falling slack. The first assassin, the waiter, tried to escape during the confusion. Stumbled to his feet, made for the door. Priscilla moved faster, intercepted him, her fist driving into his solar plexus, folding him like paper. He collapsed, gasping. Bodyguards secured him with zip ties produced from somewhere, professional restraints applied with practiced ease. Silence descended. Heavy breathing. The smell of gunpowder and spilled tea and adrenaline. Hai-Jin sat utterly composed despite nearly being murdered, her white hanbok unstained, her face calm even as chaos had erupted around her. She looked at Priscilla with new eyes, seeing not a ghost or a curiosity but a warrior. "You called me Iamione," she said quietly. "Mother, when you warned me. Instinct took over and you protected me." Priscilla realized she'd reverted to Korean, had thrown herself protectively over the matriarch without conscious thought. Muscle memory and training and something deeper. Love, perhaps. For the woman her father had loved. For the connection that transcended blood. "I apologize, I didn't mean to presume to call you that." "No," Hai-Jin stood with dignity, straightened her hanbok with careful hands. "You meant it. Deep down, below consciousness, you meant it." And I accept. You are Di Young's daughter, and Di Young was my brother in every way but blood. That makes you mine. That makes you family. We need to leave, Kyung Rock said urgently, his voice tight with controlled panic. Now, immediately, they know we're here. They know exactly where we are. There could be more coming. Teams. Backup. This might just be the opening move. Priscilla took command without thinking, without asking permission, simply stepping into the role. Follow me. Different route. Not the front entrance, they'll have it covered. Through the kitchen, past the service areas, into the parking structure. We can't use your vehicles, they're certainly compromised. I have a vehicle prepared 3 blocks away. Clean, untraceable. Move now. How do you know? Kyung Rock demanded, his instinct to question warring with his instinct to survive. How can you possibly know the safe routes have prepared vehicles? Because I've been planning escape routes from every location for 13 years, Priscilla said flatly. Because I know how Ran operates. Because I've studied her tactics and her team's capabilities. Because I am very, very good at my job. Now move, or explain to your mother why you ignored the person who just saved her life. They followed her without further argument. What followed was a harrowing escape through service corridors and back stairwells, routes that Priscilla knew intimately from reconnaissance she'd done months ago when she'd first identified Mugunghwa as a likely meeting location. Through the kitchen past startled chefs who barely registered their passage. Down a service stairwell that smelled of cleaning chemicals and old cigarette smoke. Into the parking structure through a maintenance door that Priscilla had ensured remained unlocked. To a nondescript Toyota Camry, the most common car in Los Angeles, invisible in its averageness, that Priscilla had positioned exactly here 3 days ago. She hot-wired it with practiced ease, hands sure on the wiring beneath the steering column. Kyung Rock stared from the passenger seat. Who are you really? He asked again. Who becomes this prepared, this capable, this, he struggled for words, this dangerous? Someone who watched their family burn, Priscilla replied, pulling the car out of the structure, navigating with calm precision through LA traffic. Someone who spent 13 years making sure it never happened again. Someone who learned to survive by being more prepared than everyone else. Get in the back with your mother. Put your heads down. We're going to San Pedro. To what? Kyung Rock demanded. To my home, Priscilla said. To the place Ran will never think to look for you. To safety. She drove them to San Pedro, to her modest apartment above the Korean grocery store, navigating side streets and doubling back multiple times to ensure they weren't followed, using every counter-surveillance technique Di Young had taught her. When they entered her home and saw her real operation, the 3 computer monitors, the encrypted servers, the carefully organized digital infrastructure of 13 years of investigation, Kyung Rock whispered in genuine awe, "You've been fighting this war alone, all this time. How did you not break?" Because breaking meant they won, Priscilla said simply. And I refused to let them win. Not alone anymore, Hyjin said with quiet firmness. Now you have family. Now we fight together. They spent the night in Priscilla's small apartment, planning their counter-attack. Priscilla showed them everything, walking them through years of evidence with the patience of a teacher and the precision of a prosecutor. The complete network of Song Mi Ran's trafficking operation, illustrated with organizational charts and financial flow diagrams. The 7 traders inside the Beak organization, beyond just Nam Hyun Woo, each one identified with documentation of their betrayal. The financial transfers tracked through 17 layers of shell companies until the pattern emerged irrefutably clear. The victim testimonies, 47 women whose voices she'd preserved and protected. This is incredible, Kyung Rock said, scrolling through encrypted files. This is better intelligence than our own organization has compiled. How did you do this alone? Practice, Priscilla said. Patience. And making myself invisible in places where people talk freely because they don't see me. Service industry positions are perfect for intelligence gathering. Nobody pays attention to the waitress. Nobody watches what they say around the cleaning lady. Nobody considers that the receptionist might be documenting everything. I've worked in beauty salons where Ran's family gossips, karaoke bars where her recruiters find victims, her own entertainment company as a production assistant. Each job gave me a piece of the puzzle. How do we stop her? Kyung Rock asked the essential question. How do we end this? Priscilla pulled up a calendar, pointed to a date circled in red 4 days away. Ran is hosting a K-pop showcase Friday night at Sunrise Entertainment Studios. Public event, high profile. Celebrities, investors, media coverage. But it's also when she moves new victims, using the event as cover. I have an FBI contact, Agent Sarah Chen, who's been investigating trafficking cases for 2 years. She's ready to raid with a full team if I give the word. We catch me ran in the act with victims present and evidence everywhere. Public arrest. Public trial. Maximum exposure. Complete justice. Why not just kill her? Kyung Rock's voice was cold, hard, the voice of a man raised in a world where problems were solved with violence. It would be cleaner, quieter, safer for everyone. One bullet and this ends. No, Priscilla said firmly. That's what she would do. That's how she operates. Violence and fear and making problems disappear. We're better than her. Those 47 women deserve to see their abuser face justice in a courtroom. The world deserves to know what she did, to see that monsters can be stopped through law and evidence and truth. And most importantly, if we kill her quietly, her organization continues. Her networks remain intact. Her methods get copied. But if we expose everything publicly, if we dismantle her piece by piece through legal prosecution, we destroy not just her but everything she built. Hae-jin studied her adopted daughter with something like wonder. Di-young taught you very well. Justice, not vengeance. Building something better from the ashes. He always said true power lies in justice, that revenge is a fire that consumes everything including the person who carries it. I believe him, Priscilla said quietly. I've spent 13 years carrying this fire. I refuse to let it burn me up. I want to build something better. Use what I've learned to protect people instead of just destroying enemies. As dawn broke over Lowe's angels, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold visible through Priscilla's apartment window, Hae-jin removed a jade ring from her finger. It was ancient, clearly precious, carved with delicate orchids in extraordinary detail. My mother's ring, she said softly. Given to her by her mother, passed down through 4 generations. I want you to have it. I have no daughters of my blood, but I have you. Di-young's daughter, which makes you mine. Wear this. Let it remind you that you belong, that you have family, that you are not alone anymore. I can't, Priscilla protested, overcome by the gesture. This is too precious. This is your family heritage. You are my family, Hae-jin said firmly. You earned this through blood and sacrifice and 13 years of fighting alone. Take it. Honor us by wearing it. Priscilla slipped the ring on her right hand. It fit perfectly, as if made for her. She looked down at it, this symbol of acceptance and belonging, and felt something release in her chest. Some tension she'd carried for 13 years finally easing. Thank you, Iamione, she whispered. The next 4 days passed in a blur of coordinated operations that would have impressed any military strategist. Priscilla remotely locked down all Beek family financial accounts using access she'd carefully cultivated over months, freezing out the traitors, preventing any further theft. Kyung Rock's loyal security team, reduced to only those whose background checks Priscilla had personally verified, secured key properties and assets. They confronted Nam Hyun-woo in a parking garage. Kyung Rock's rage barely controlled as his trusted CFO confessed everything, revealed by the irrefutable evidence Priscilla presented and the recording device that captured every word. My Ran is my aunt, Nam had said, weeping, his composure completely shattered. She raised me after my parents died. She convinced me that the Beek family was corrupt, that we were building something better, something that would help people. I didn't know about the trafficking. I swear I didn't know. I just moved money like she asked, provided information like she requested. I thought I was helping family. You helped a monster, Kyung Rock had said coldly, and now you'll help us stop her. And they coordinated with FBI agent Sarah Chen, who'd been investigating missing persons cases in LA's Korean community for 2 years and was stunned by the evidence Priscilla presented. This is incredible work, Chen had said in their secure meeting. We've been chasing shadows for years. You've built a complete case. Why didn't you come to us sooner? Because I needed to be sure, Priscilla had replied. One mistake, one gap in the evidence, and she walks free. I couldn't risk that. So I waited until it was perfect. Friday night arrived with the weight of inevitability. The K-pop showcase at Sunrise Entertainment Studios was exactly as glamorous as Priscilla had predicted. Red carpet. Cameras everywhere. Celebrities and investors in expensive clothing making elegant small talk. Young K-pop trainees performing with desperate perfection, knowing their entire futures depended on impressing the right people. And presiding over it all like a benevolent grandmother, Song Mi ran in an elegant designer dress, her smile warm and welcoming, her reputation impeccable. Priscilla entered as service staff once again, wearing the uniform that made her invisible. Black slacks, white shirt, pleasant professional smile. She moved through the crowd serving champagne, clearing plates, being exactly what everyone expected. Nobody looked at her face. Nobody registered her presence beyond the function she served. But as she worked, she planted micro-cameras in strategic locations, photographed security positions, identified entry and exit points, documented everything with the methodical thoroughness of someone who'd spent 13 years preparing for this exact moment. Backstage, in a hallway away from the glamorous public spaces, she encountered a young woman crying silently, trying to muffle her sobs. 19 years old, Korean, with the kind of fresh-faced beauty that K-pop agencies prized. Her makeup was perfect but couldn't quite hide the bruise on her jawline. Her dress was expensive but hung wrong on her frame like she'd lost weight rapidly. "Are you okay?" Priscilla asked in gentle Korean, the question automatic, the instinct to help overriding tactical considerations. The girl, her name was Jai-woo as Priscilla would later learn, looked up with desperate eyes. "Please," she whispered, "please help us. We're locked in a room backstage, 12 of us. They promised us K-pop careers, auditions with major agencies. But when we got here, they took our passports, locked us up. Said we owe them for travel costs, for training, for opportunity. The debt is impossible. We can never repay it. And tonight they're moving us somewhere else. I heard them talking. Saying we're being transferred to buyers. Please, please help us." Priscilla's heart shattered and reformed in that instant. This was why she'd spent 13 years fighting. Not abstract justice. Not revenge. This girl. These 12 women. The 47 who'd come before. The countless more who would come after if Mi Ran wasn't stopped. She photographed everything Jai-woo showed her. The locked room. The other women inside, their faces showing varying degrees of fear and resignation and desperate hope. The security setup. The movement schedule. Sent it all to Agent Chen with an urgent message. "Move now. Victims confirmed on site. Active trafficking in progress." When Mi Ran's security lieutenant discovered Priscilla in the restricted area, she maintained her service worker persona perfectly. Apologized profusely in accented Korean, claimed she'd gotten lost looking for the kitchen, played confused and helpless. The lieutenant bought it, escorted her out with barely concealed contempt for her stupidity. She was just a dumb server after all, not a threat, not important enough to worry about. But Priscilla had accomplished her mission, evidence gathered, FBI alerted, victims located. Now came the hardest part, the confrontation. She deliberately triggered a security alert accessing Mi Ran's private office on the top floor. Let herself be caught. Let herself be brought before the woman who'd ordered her family's execution. Song Mi Ran sat behind an expensive desk in an office that screamed success and respectability. Awards on the walls. Photos with celebrities and politicians. Everything carefully curated to present the image of a beloved entertainment industry leader. "Explain why you were in a restricted area," Mi Ran said dismissively, not even looking up from the papers she was reviewing. Her voice was cultured, pleasant, the tone of someone accustomed to minor annoyances being handled efficiently. Priscilla dropped her service persona like a mask she was tired of wearing. Spoke in perfect Gwangju dialect, the words sharp and clear. "You don't remember me, Song Mi Ran SSI. But I remember you. I was 9 years old when you visited our home. You brought my foster mother Jinhee flowers, white lilies. You smiled at me and said I was getting so tall. You asked about my Korean studies. And 3 hours later, you ordered us all killed." My Ran's head snapped up, her face draining of color. Her eyes went wide with genuine shock. "You, the black child, Di Young's stray. You died in the bombing. I verified the reports. Everyone in that car died. Everyone. You failed," Priscilla said, each word deliberate. "I survived. And I've been building this case against you for 13 years. Every crime, every victim, every financial transaction, every conversation you thought was private. It's all documented, all verified, all backed up in places you can never reach. And tonight it ends." She pulled out her phone, played an audio recording. Mi Ran's own voice from 13 years ago, ordering Di Young's death. Then another recording from 3 months ago, discussing pricing for trafficking victims. Then financial documents, scrolling across the screen, showing the embezzlement in irrefutable detail. My Rand's shock transformed into cold rage, the mask dropping to reveal the monster underneath. You think you're clever, she hissed. You think this matters? I've built an empire over 40 years. I have connections in every level of government, law enforcement, business. I've made myself untouchable. Your evidence means nothing. No one will believe the word of a black woman with a grudge over mine. I'm beloved, I'm respected, I'm protected. Priscilla smiled without humor. You were protected. Past tense. Because in about 30 seconds, the FBI is going to breach this building. They're going to find the 12 women you have locked backstage. They're going to find the financial records in your systems. They're going to arrest you on live television because I made sure the news cameras outside know exactly when and where to point their lenses. Your reputation ends tonight. Your empire collapses tonight. And those 47 women, those girls whose lives you destroyed, they get to see you face justice. My Rand's hand moved toward a button beneath her desk, probably an alarm or security summons. Before she could press it, the door opened. Beek Hai-jin entered, dressed in white as always, moving like vengeance given human form. Behind her came Kyung-rok, armed and dangerous and absolutely furious. Hello, old friend, Hai-jin said, her voice soft and terrible. We have 40 years of friendship to discuss, starting with the moment you murdered my brother, my best friend, my soulmate. Starting with the moment you betrayed everything we built together. The confrontation that followed was devastatingly quiet. No shouting, no dramatic accusations, just two women who'd built an empire together, now standing on opposite sides of an unbridgeable chasm. Hai-jin's controlled fury expressing itself in precision questions. Mi Rand's attempts at justification crumbling under the weight of evidence and truth. You always were weak, Mi Rand finally spat, her composure shattering. Sentimental. Di-young filled your head with nonsense about protecting the powerless. But this world doesn't reward mercy. It rewards strength. I built something real, something profitable, something that mattered. Those girls were nothing, nobody, disposable. Their suffering bought power, bought influence, bought everything we have. Everything you have, Hai-jin corrected coldly. Everything you stole. Everything you built on blood and broken lives. And tonight, you lose all of it. The sound of sirens filled the air outside. Vehicles screeching to a halt. Tactical teams moving into position. Agent Sarah Chen's voice over a bullhorn demanding surrender. News cameras rolling, broadcasting everything live. Kyung-rok raised his weapon, pointed it at Mi Rand with rock-steady hands. For Di-young, he said quietly, for all the people you destroyed, you deserve to die. No, Priscilla said firmly, stepping between them. This isn't who we are. This isn't justice. This is revenge. And revenge solves nothing. She deserves death, Kyung-rok argued, his finger on the trigger, his entire body vibrating with controlled rage. She deserves to face what she's done, Priscilla countered. Publicly. Completely. Those girls downstairs deserve to see her arrested. The 47 victims deserve to testify in court. The world deserves to know the truth. If we kill her now, we become what she is. We solve the problem with violence and it changes nothing. But if we expose her, if we let justice run its course, we destroy not just her but everything she represents. We prove that monsters can be stopped without becoming monsters ourselves. Hai-jin placed her hand on her son's arm, gently lowering the weapon. She's right. Di-young would say the same thing. Justice, not vengeance. Building something better from the ashes. That's what separates us from people like her. Priscilla pulled out her phone, sent the final signal to Agent Chen. The FBI tactical team breached the building moments later, professional and overwhelming. News cameras outside captured everything. Song-mi Rand being led away in handcuffs, her perfect reputation destroyed in real time as reporters learned about the trafficking charges. The 12 women being rescued, including Jai Woo, brought out to safety, and FBI victim advocates who would help them rebuild shattered lives. As Mi Rand was led past Priscilla, she looked up with pure hatred. You'll never be Korean, she said viciously, making a final attempt to wound. You'll never belong, you'll always be an outsider, an American, a black woman pretending to be something she's not. Priscilla smiled, genuine and fierce. I'm not trying to be just Korean, or just American, or just black. I'm all of it, every piece, every identity. And that's my strength, not my weakness. You thought being other made me less. But it made me see things you never could, made me understand people you dismissed. Made me powerful in ways you never imagined. So thank you for underestimating me. It made this so much easier. 3 months later, on a warm October day, Priscilla stood in Yongdong Market in Gwangju, breathing in smells she hadn't experienced in 13 years. Grilled mackerel, kimchi, fresh vegetables, the organized chaos of merchants calling prices, the musical flow of Gwangju dialect all around her. Home. After 13 years, finally home. Haijin walked beside her, both of them drawing curious stares from market vendors. The elderly Korean woman in her elegant white hanbok and the young black woman in modern business attire, clearly together, clearly family in some indefinable way. An old vendor selling vegetables squinted at them, recognition dawning slowly. Little Seo Yeon, she called out in Gwangju dialect thick with decades. Di Young's daughter, but you're alive. We thought you died with them. The reunion that followed was tearful and joyous. Old neighbors who remembered the black child who'd lived in their community, who'd learned their language and their ways, who'd been lost in tragedy. They touched her face, her hands, confirming she was real, welcomed her home with tears and laughter and questions and stories. Later, at the community center, they visited Di Young's memorial. A simple stone marker with his name and dates, surrounded by white chrysanthemums that someone still brought fresh every week. Priscilla placed white orchids, Haijin's signature flower, a symbol of respect and remembrance. Jai-woo was there, having returned to Korea after months of therapy and recovery. She was working with victim advocacy organizations now, using her experience to help others. When she saw Priscilla, she rushed forward, embraced her. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving me, for saving all of us, for showing us that justice is possible." "Someone saved me once," Priscilla replied, gesturing to Di Young's memorial. "I'm just passing it forward, using what I was given to protect others. Building something good from something terrible." She knelt before her father's memorial stone, spoke in Gwangju dialect soft enough that only he could hear, wherever he was. "Abioji, I finished what you started." Song Mi-ran is facing trial for trafficking. The prosecution has 47 victim testimonies, financial records, audio evidence. She'll spend the rest of her life in prison. The Beek family is transitioning to completely legitimate businesses, using their power to protect people instead of exploit them. And I'm not done yet. I'm working with the FBI now, consulting on trafficking cases. Using everything you taught me to save people the way you saved me. I hope you're proud. I hope you're at peace. I love you. I miss you. Thank you for everything. She wore the jade ring Haijin had given her on one hand, and on the other, a simple silver band that had been her foster mother Jin Hee's wedding ring, recovered from the wreckage and returned to her by someone anonymous who'd kept it safe for 13 years. Both families, both heritages, both identities, worn openly and proudly. Kyung Rock had flown in separately, giving her space for this deeply personal journey. But that evening, at a small restaurant overlooking Gwangju's glittering nightscape, they shared a meal. The relationship between them had evolved over 3 months from suspicious allies to genuine friends to something more tentative and promising. Mutual respect had grown into affection. Shared purpose had created deep connection. "What will you do now?" he asked, watching her with warm eyes. "Now that the mission is complete, now that justice is served. Who is Priscilla Carter when she's not hunting monsters?" "Keep working," Priscilla replied, considering the question seriously. "Keep protecting people. Keep being exactly who I am. I've accepted a permanent consulting position with the FBI's trafficking task force. I'm also working with Haijin to establish a foundation that helps exploitation victims rebuild their lives. Education, job training, legal support, mental health services. Everything I wished I'd had when I was surviving alone." And she smiled, "Maybe figure out who I am when I'm not defined by vengeance. Maybe learn to just live, experience joy, build relationships, be human instead of a weapon." "Both Priscilla and Seo Yeon?" he asked gently. "Always both," she confirmed, never choosing one over the other, never hiding parts of myself to make others comfortable. "I'm Black and Korean and American, and all of it matters. All of it makes me who I am." Haijin joined them, completing their unusual family constellation. The matriarch who'd lost her best friend and gained a daughter. The son trying to build something better than what he'd inherited. The daughter who'd survived impossible odds and chosen justice over revenge. To Di Young, Haijin raised her glass, her voice strong and clear. "Who taught us that true power lies in justice. Who showed us that protecting the vulnerable is strength, not weakness. Who saved a child nobody else wanted and gave her the tools to save herself and others. May his memory be eternal. May his legacy continue through us." They drank, And outside Gwangju's lights sparkled like captured stars, like hope made visible, like proof that even the darkest nights eventually give way to dawn. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in the power of justice over revenge, in the strength that comes from embracing every part of your identity, then subscribe to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it,